Why don't you go ahead and take that last comment?
Drinking game. Have a shot every time Haley Joel Osment says to be clear.
Okay, look. Jamie does not look... Hang on. What? Oh, my producer's putting a picture of Haley Joel Osment on my screen. Oh, yeah. Okay, fair. We'll move on. Now, while Eric can get angry and maybe he flies off a little bit, though I've told him he was much nicer than me, but he sometimes feels bad after. You should reassure him in the comments that he was in the right. But anyway, he can get angry, but he also knows how to drop the microphone. Check out this clip.
If your scripture is true, there's nothing that I can say that would bring it down. And there's nothing that I could say that would make it less true.
So this is a concept that is kind of hard for people. People get offended when you start to investigate their religious claims. And some even, I've had people say they won't even dare because they feel like that's somehow like an affront to God to dare question him. But if God exists and he's real and he's true, what does he have possibly to hide?
Exactly. I personally think that the reason people get so upset when you start questioning their faith is because you're pointing to them at that little seed of doubt that they have in their minds, and it's really uncomfortable and they've been trained to ignore it their whole lives. So like pointing it out kind of just really unsettles the psyche, and so getting defensive is kind of their response. And it's like, well, if it's true, then why are you so defensive, you know? On to the comments. You might have noticed a third face there that was not familiar. Go ahead, EJ, read that first, mostly because I want to hear you say his last name. No. Read that first comment. Am I going to mispronounce it? Probably not. It's as it sounds. It sounds as it's spelled, just sounded like but it's just one of those consonant sounds. It just sounded like a setup if you wanted me to mispronounce it. Okay. Ray Blevins equals legend. I feel like you should hit the blah a little harder. Ray Blevins. Ray is from the early days of the Atheist Experience, and he's a really cool guy, and it was a really exciting thing to have him on the show, and I haven't got to meet him in person, but I do aspire to one day. Okay, and actually, EJ, if you don't mind, I'm going to give you the second comment too, because there's fun words that I don't know if you know them. You're just trying to set me up to mispronounce things, make myself look stupid. Okay, here we go. A little bit, yep. Every time someone says epistemology, I hear episiotomy, not something you want in the street. Definitely. Do you know what an episiotomy is? It sounds like a medical term. It is a medical term, and it's a weird thing to think of every time you hear epistemology. That is a personal problem. You see, what we're talking about here is a procedure done to a woman giving birth. It's a supplementary incision done to the vagina to control the way they tear as the child comes out. So if that's what you're thinking of every time somebody says epistemology, you should work on that. Why? I mean, hopefully it's because this person's an OBGYN and not just like a creep who's real into weird medical procedures. Hopefully. Or just, I guess I can see just the word association too. It's not as though they aren't far off from each other, but at a certain point, like every time you hear the word semicolon, do you immediately go to cholesterol? So EJ, it's been a few weeks now since you've been a co-host or a guest host on the show, and I think we all want to know who was your favorite caller on during your time. Oh man, you're putting me on the spot here. That's the point. Well, I'm not going to say Victor or Hamish because quite honestly, that was pretty painful. There was I think it was Olin who called in who was talking about like, you know, what our generation's struggle is. And I really enjoyed his commentary and, yeah, I really enjoy talking to older atheists that are really positive about where the atheist movement is going, because there's a lot of older atheists that are like, oh, these kids with their gender studies and whatnot. So I really appreciated somebody who was an older member of the atheist movement and supported where we're going with it. So I'm going to say my favorite was Victor because it actually was the moment where he presented himself for, frankly, the fraud that he is, the person who... It's not about whether or not you are right or wrong. It's he's made a position, and as long as he can say words, he's right. And I think he exposed it the most because you were able to come back with the answers he was asking for. And then later he's like, what does orbital mechanics even have to do with anything? Well, it's the answer to the fucking question you asked. So I like that because it was the moment where the ACA realized they don't need to deal with such a fool anymore.
I'm not saying that's the end of Victor forever. Maybe they'll take his call again one day. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe next
I'm
time
just
I
saying,
come on.
Yeah, and right after you, there was the Tracy with, I'm forgetting the other host's name, but I know you know.
Callie Wright.
Callie Wright. And he tried to pull the same stuff, and Tracy was just like, I'm not the person to appeal to, and right now you have to convince me that the pictures of the Earth aren't good enough evidence. I almost wanted to set up a debate with him where I was like, okay, what's your point for flat Earth? And then it's like, all right, Jimmy, and yours? And I would just hold up a picture of the Earth. And then he would go, oh, that's fucking fake, though. And then I would just go, no. That's
See, what's amazing to me is the number of people that watched that video and then came away thinking that Victor won that debate because I made one factual error. And I'm like, I was wrong about one thing and right about everything else. And he was wrong about everything. So I don't see how me being wrong once means that he won automatically.
Yep.